Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
It is Chad Benson in for Greg. He is back from what I believe tomorrow, enjoying some much-needed time off. But as always, Jim Garrity here with me. And Jim, we got a lot to talk about, man. It's a crazy time. And let's start with this Three Martini Lunch with, of course, the good. Stephanopoulos. How do you think he did? I got to be honest with you. I've been all over the place with this. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but, you know, he's going to write a letter? What?
Yeah, I suppose you could say we have a double-fisted good martini today. One being that I think Stephanopoulos did at least a pretty good job in the whole 22 minutes that Biden was willing to give him. I wouldn't mind a little more pushback on some of Biden's assertions that he's the guy who united NATO and you know, he's the guy who took it to Putin and all that stuff. But all in all, I think you can't say that was, you know, puff pieces or softballs. This morning, Biden's latest maneuver is to basically write a letter to congressional Democrats and declare the controversy is over. It's time for it to end, is his words. The question of how to move forward has been well aired for over a week now. The party has one job, which is to defeat Donald Trump. We have 42 days to the Democratic. Basically saying, no, it's over. Now, one of my first observations is he's sending a letter. He's not going to Capitol Hill and making the case himself. He's not interacting with people. He called in to Morning Joe today. Morning Jolt is the reliable newsletter. And apparently seemed to be reading from papers. You could hear the rustling of papers in the background as he insisted that he wasn't going to. Look, if he could be on camera, he would. If he could go in person and reassure Democrats, he would. He can't, which is another sign he shouldn't be president. But Chad, what did you make of all that?
I hear all the time that everybody worries about democracy, but I put aside all of that stuff. And I said today, from the human side of stuff, Jim, which I don't think we touch on enough, he has lucid moments. He knows that he's in the end of the fourth quarter of his life and that maybe this is keeping him going a little bit more than if there wasn't this. The human side of stuff, I think, needs to be talked about as well. And the fact that his family, I mean, Michael Moore this weekend, no holds barred. This is elder abuse. Who would let their father or mother go up there knowing that this was, going to be an issue and allow that to happen? Or people who were standing by holding on to power. I think we've left a lot of that stuff out of there. There's no way that you're saving this. I compared him today on my show to Larry from Jaws, the mayor who lied about it was a boat accident because he didn't want the summer to go crazy, and now he's still trying to save August. You're not saving this. There's no saving this.
Yeah, it is when for example, a politician has a bad debate. There's a playbook that campaigns have, and usually it means get the candidate out there as much as possible, doing as many events, making as many interviews and appearances to dispel the memory of that. You replace one image that looks bad with a newer image that looks better. And it took Biden a week to do the Stephanopoulos interview. He's not doing a press conference until the NATO summit later this week. Look, he's not doing them because he can't. And I don't think a letter is going to do it. As I wrote in today's Morning Jolt, I think the Democrats are now stuck in this cycle of insisting that, they'll say, he really looks bad, he should be replaced. Biden comes out and says, no, I'm not going to go anywhere. I am the nominee and that's final. They realize how hard it is to replace him. And then they kind of I think it'll die down until the next bad event that Biden has, which he will have inevitably sooner or later. And it just is going to be in this circle over and over again until the party decides they have to replace him. Reasons for why they have to replace him will be up in a few minutes, but we have other business to attend to, don't we, Chad?
Absolutely. You know what he could use? Some Field of Greens.
He could and should. You see, a small regret is slouching in the dentist chair and thinking, I should have brushed and flossed better. But a big health regret is listening to your doctor and thinking, I should have paid attention to nutrition when I was younger. That's why you should start taking Field of Greens today. Their current offer is up to 15% off the first offer, free rush shipping if you use the promo code 3ML. Field of Greens is so powerful that it promises at your next checkup, your doctor will notice your improved health or your money back guaranteed. Now, don't look back and say, I should have paid attention to nutrition when I was younger. Field of Greens is a key to better health today and when it matters most. To start, Field of Greens will give you 15% off your first order, plus free rush shipping. Visit fieldofgreens.com and use the promo code 3ML, just like it sounds, numeral 3 and the letters M and L, capitals. Promo code 3ML to get 15% off and free shipping at fieldofgreens.com. One last time, that's fieldofgreens.com.
We go from our good to our bad, and you and I touched on this last week, that, hey, are there people making decisions that are unelected officials behind the president's back because they feel he can't? That scares me in a time when, saw my buddy Gordon Chang out there saying, look, if I'm Xi and if I'm Putin, I'm moving on everything I possibly can because this guy's in no way, shape, or form capable of handling a 3 a.m. phone call.
Yeah, look, the U.S. military still exists. The U.S. national security agencies and intelligence agencies still exist. But in the end, the U.S. response to any act of aggression or provocations or things like that all comes down to the commander-in-chief. And just day after day since we last chatted on Wednesday, Chad, it's been, one report after another that's disturbing. Semaphore quoted a White House official who said, look, I'm mid-level, I'm not managerial, but I don't know if the president is seeing what I send him. Everything gets sent to the senior staff. The senior staff comes back with the decisions. We don't know how much Biden is actually being told and how much paperwork is actually going across his desk. Axios said that, quote, Biden is staffed so closely that he's lost all independence. POTUS relies on staff to nudge him with reminders of who he's meeting, including former staffers and advisors who Biden should easily remember without a reminder from Deputy Chief of Staff Andy Tomasini. Axios separately reported that for his events, Biden staffers prepare a short document with large print and photos that include his precise path to the podium. And I don't know if my words are describing this, sufficiently. But they quoted a staffer who had prepared for this fundraiser for Biden who said, look, it surprised me that a seasoned political pro like the president would need detailed verbal and visual instructions on how to enter and exit a room, unquote. As I wrote today, Chad, if these reports are accurate, and there's at this point little reason to doubt them, Joe Biden already is not the president. He's just this guy who waves, to the crowd while the actual decision-making is made by this small group of people around him.
Scary. That is, and non-elected officials who are taking it amongst themselves to make certain decisions, Jim, based on the fact that they're not sure if he saw anything or even understands what they're doing. How did we get here? And how did anybody allow this to happen in a real way without speaking up? I go back to there's a plenty of people in there, both family and close allies, who want to maintain status quo and power.
Yeah. Years ago, I spoke to somebody who was a speechwriter in the Bush White House, and he's described that, how the White House staff for years, if we're going back decades, has had this way of kind of steering the president in a particular direction. There's some sort of problem, and they go to the president in the briefing and they say, well, Mr. President, there are 3 options. Option 1 is to do nothing, and the problem will get worse. Option 2 is very dangerous and could blow up the world. But we have this sensible option number 3. And by framing it that way, you can kind of steer the president in a particular direction. And that by itself, that's just kind of the nature of staffing in the White House. And I think you could safely say we all knew Biden was up and getting, he was, once he was past 80, everybody kind of knew he's slowing down. He's not as sharp as he used to be. I had been questioning his memory since at least, the Afghanistan debacle. But we kind of figured that, there's still somebody in there, and he's still, these descriptions make him sound like an empty suit, a hollow man, somebody who just is, going through the motions of acting like he's president, but not actually being president. And decisions are actually being made by the White House chief of staff or his senior aides or Jill or God knows who else. And it really is not and the irony is the entire Democratic message of this election is, this is democracy. You have to vote for our guy in order to preserve democracy, when in fact he's not actually, he is only in name the president. President in name only.
Crazy, man. It's crazy. We're going to get to crazy in a minute. You think Z-Biotic could help?
The president needs a great deal of help, but actually, apparently Biden doesn't drink. So apparently this is not something we could recommend for him. It's a game-changing product that a lot of people use before a night out with drinks. It's called Z-Biotics. And let's face it, for a lot of people, after a night with drinks, you just don't bounce back the next day the way you used to. Just a natural consequence of aging. So a lot of people are making a choice that they can either have a great night or a great next day, but that changes once you've found Z-Biotics. It's a surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after a night of drinking with Z-Biotics. So Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle those rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in your gut. And it's this byproduct, not dehydration, that is to blame for your rough next morning. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme that breaks down this byproduct. So just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. And as Greg and I always emphasize, drink responsibly and you will feel your best the next morning. Go to zbiotics.com/3ml. Once again, numeral 3, letter M, letter L, to get 15% off your first order when you use 3ml at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they will refund your money, no questions asked. Once again, visit Z-Biotics, that's the letter Z, biotics.com/3ml, and use the code 3ml at checkout for 15% off. And thank you, Z-Biotics, for sponsoring this episode and our good times.
All right. We've had the good, the bad. Let's get to the crazy. I think everybody could use a drink for this one. Biden, when he has a lucid moment, says he's got to stay in, Jim, because it's simple. He won the primary.
Yeah, this is a sign where you're not quite scraping the bottom of the barrel for reasons here, but the primary only featured, for a while, Marianne Williamson, the author who people remember as a spiritual advisor. She's been on Oprah, things like that. I find her enjoyable, but I don't think she's a natural commander-in-chief. And a fairly obscure Minnesota Congressman, Dean Phillips, who, by the way, was running on essentially the exact same platform as Biden, but who said, look, he's too old. I'm a younger body. I give you everything you want in a healthy body that can serve 4 years. And, Dean Phillips got less than 1%. Not outrageous to say the party rejected him. So there's two problems. The first is that if Democrats knew the true condition of Biden's health and mind, and we can say, yes, they should have known. We can point to all the public flubs and bad moments that Biden has had. But I think that there was this faith, this acceptance that if Biden ever got really bad and couldn't finish sentences and just seemed out of it and was, staring blank-eyed and slack-jawed, that the staff around him would say, Mr. President, you're in no shape to serve another term, and you'd have a real primary. They didn't do that. And, Democrats can fairly say, we were not fully informed about the president's condition during the primaries. And the second thing is, I don't want to say the Democratic primary was rigged, but the schedule was changed by the Democratic National Committee, by folks who were appointed to those positions by Biden. And it was just altered to minimize the chances that any challenger to Biden would get any traction. Traditionally, starts in Iowa. Democrats had a disastrous Iowa caucus back in 2020. They couldn't count the votes. It took them 3 days to get it done because of tech issues. So they decided Iowa can't be first anymore. Fine, okay. But they also skipped New Hampshire, which you'll recall Biden finished 5th in 2020. And they began with South Carolina, which was the state that launched the big Biden comeback. So you begin with one of Biden's best states. Then it's on to Nevada, where Biden finished second behind Bernie Sanders. He got about 20% of the vote back in 2020. Nevada was not not Biden's best state, but not his worst state. And then it would be on to Michigan, another state where Biden won pretty handily. He beat Sanders 53% to 36%. So you're going with good Biden state, mediocre state, good state, and then it's Super Tuesday. So there is no chance for a lesser known primary challenger to do an Iowa and shake hands in the diners and to try to win an early contest based on retail politics. Super Tuesday had 14 states. You needed to be well funded. So really, the way the DNC set up the primary schedule, it was almost impossible for anybody to successfully challenge Joe Biden. So the argument, he won the primary fair and square, it was over before it began. There really was no shot for, even if Gavin Newsom had wanted to, even if Gretchen Whitmer had wanted to. You know, any of these other Democrats, they knew they didn't have any shot going into this. So you can't say, well, we shut down. I think Florida never had a primary, arguing that Dean Phillips hadn't qualified. So you can't say, oh, he won the primary fair and square, when everything the DNC did was designed to minimize the likelihood of a competitive primary.
Well, should we expect anything different? This is also the same group of folks that gave, Donna Brazile and everybody handed out questions to Hillary and whatnot. I mean, should we expect anything different? There's a group of people, and usually it used to be this way on both sides, that kind of pick and choose who they want as president, and they have chosen him for whatever reason. This is the guy that they're going to live and die with, and they did say, RFK Jr., he had to go run on an independent ticket. They never gave him a chance. Because he would have, I think, embarrassed this president.
Yeah. Look, the fact that, by the way, during these, primary contests, it's not like Biden was out there doing a lot of interviews, doing a lot of rallies, making a lot of appearances. There's a loud argument from a whole bunch of Democrats who, up until very recently, thought of themselves as solid Biden defenders, who were terrified by that debate performance, who were terrified by... the debate performance was problem strike one. The lack of him going out and doing an interview like that with Stephanopoulos for a week was strike two. And I think strike three is going to come at some point in the coming weeks or days. The problem is that, as we alluded to, there is no easy way to remove a president who doesn't want to be removed, either from office or as the nominee. You'd have to persuade a whole bunch of delegates who are, at least like the DNC rules do give them freedom of conscience to say, if a delegate could say, well, when I signed on to be a Biden delegate, I thought he was of sound mind. I don't think that anymore. Therefore, I'm supporting Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom or whoever they want to do. They can do that. The other alternative is to invoke the 25th Amendment, which, by the way, I think is not a crazy discussion at this point at all. As we alluded to, he's not really president anymore. But the problem is that you can't really, once you invoke the 25th Amendment, you can't say, but we're going to keep him in office until January 20th. Either he's competent to do his job or he isn't. And if he isn't, he's got to get out immediately. So the Democrats don't have any easy or good options ahead of them. And I think, right now I'm leaning towards I think they wimp out, but I don't know. We'll see what happens in the coming days.
Did you see the New Yorker actually had an article saying this is what the 25th Amendment was created for? That's the New Yorker. Yeah. And here's my question. I hammered the media, in particular the liberal side of the media, that, always chalks everything off to Russian disinformation or, right-wing talking points. Are there people out there, though? Because I'm starting to believe there are people out there who genuinely had no idea he was this bad.
I think it's safe to say that everybody, they're the true believers. If you believed Karine Jean-Pierre saying, he has so much energy, I can't keep up with him, you should not answer any emails from Nigerian princes. And that, semi-seriously, you shouldn't vote. You really are that, because we could see some. But I think most people who've dealt with elderly parents, elderly grandparents, know that people have good days and bad days. And figured, okay, he's going to turn 82 after the election. He's probably slowed down a bit, but he can still get the job done, at least for a while. And I think the debate exposed, no, he cannot. That was a really high stakes situation. And you really got to squint to find anything that was good. And it's not like the Stephanopoulos interview really dispelled any of the concerns at all. So that's where we are. I think
that's
they're kind of,
It's going to be interesting, man. There's no doubt about that. He's Jim Garrity. I'm Chad Benson in for Greg Columbus. He'll be back tomorrow. Follow me at Chad Benson Show. That's on your X/Twitter/whatever, all the other social media out there. Jim, people want to reach out to you and find out all the things you're doing, read all your stuff.
Well, at nationalreview.com, I write the Morning Jolt email newsletter, which you can also find online, right in the corner fairly frequently. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post, and on Twitter, I am at Jim Garrity.
All right. Always good to be here. Appreciate it, my man.